Explicit voice of America's Blackout Brief Daily.
This is the explicit voice of America. It's me, Explicit. All right, today, pay attention to what Washington removes from public view, then pay even closer attention to what it quietly leaves in place. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche formally killed the Anti-Weaponization Fund. That fund could have paid people who claimed the government targeted them for political reasons. Two Republican senators had been holding up Blanche's nomination. Once he rescinded the fund, they agreed to let him move forward. The separate agreement protecting Trump's family and business from certain retroactive IRS audits is still sitting there. The fund had the shocking price tag. The tax agreement may directly affect Trump's own money. Washington removed the first one and preserved the second. Now, look farther down the protection ladder. 25 states are trying to stop family assistance records from reaching immigrant authorities. Visitors from 50 countries can now face visa bonds as high as $20,000. And roughly 24,000 HIV patients just lost their negligence claim against Gilead. They say the company delayed a potentially safer medicine. These stories come from different agencies, different courts, and different corners of the law. Together, they show us how government hands out shelter, suspicion, cost, and risk. Today's charge is this: legal protection is being rationed upward while vulnerable people are turned into data debtors and risk. Here are the 5 things that matter today. 1. Late Sunday, Todd Blanche formally rescinded the Justice Department's $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund. Republican Senators John Cornyn and Tom Tillis then said they would support moving his nomination for Attorney General forward. Their announcement clears the obstacle they created. Blanche is still awaiting confirmation, and the Senate Judiciary Committee still has to act. The fund was meant to compensate people who said the government targeted them for political reasons. Critics feared Trump's allies and January 6 defendants could collect from it. The fund never paid a claim, okay? The separate tax audit agreement remains in place for past filings by the named Trump plaintiffs. 2, today President Trump said talks with Iran were happening and called this Iran's last chance. Iranian officials, however, said there were no current talks with the United States. That contradiction there matters. A president can move military expectations, oil markets, and civilian fear simply by discussing diplomacy while threatening escalation. All of that can happen before the public even knows whether a negotiating channel exists. 3, today, 25 states sued to stop a new federal policy before TANF data sharing begins on August 11th. TANF stands for Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. A record can include someone's social security number, income, and marriage status. Under the policy being challenged, federal agencies could receive that information. DHS is one of those agencies. Paperwork submitted to feed a family could also create immigration exposure. The states want a court to intervene before the sharing starts. Their request is still pending. That means the August 11th date is still live. 4, today a permanent visa bond program took effect for certain B1 and B2 visitors from 50 countries. 30 of those countries are in Africa. Consular officers may require an applicant to post a bond of up to $20,000 before receiving a visa. The decision is made case by case, and waivers are possible. Even so, that much money can shut a family out before anyone reaches an airport. 5. Today, the California Supreme Court ruled 6-1 against a negligent claim brought by an estimated 24,000 HIV patients against Gilead Sciences. The patients say Gilead delayed a potentially safer medicine while its older drug remained profitable. The court ordered the negligence claims dismissed. Under the theory presented here, the company had no duty to pursue that potentially safer product. The court answered the legal question. Factual disputes remain, including the older medicine's reported risks to kidneys and bones. Now, this ruling closes one legal route. Other claims may remain. The larger policy fight now moves toward lawmakers and regulators. That is the kind of reporting paid subscriptions sustain. Okay? Become a paid subscriber at explicit.com. The support links are in the description. Now, let's get back to Todd Blanche. The story shows how Washington can resolve the scandal everybody can see while protecting the benefit most people will never hear about. Blanche is serving as acting attorney general while seeking the permanent job. Before that, he represented Donald Trump as a personal lawyer. All right. Cornyn and Tillis threatened to block his nomination. They wanted the Justice Department to formally abandon that fund and explain the tax audit settlement. They got the written order they demanded. Blanche rescinded the fund and said it would have no force or effect. The two senators announced their support. His nomination now has a path to the next vote. And that part right there is settled. The fund is gone and it never paid anyone. However, the tax agreement is where the story gets harder to see. It grew out of Trump's lawsuit against the IRS and Treasury. The agreement covers Trump, his sons, and the Trump Organization. It reaches past tax filings while future filings remain open to audit. Blanche and the Justice Department call its reach narrow. They point out that it is limited to the named parties and the defendants in the lawsuit. Narrow is doing some very heavy lifting here. Associated Press reporting says this protection could affect more than $100 million in back taxes claimed by the government. That amount is disputed tax exposure. It's not a final judgment establishing what Trump owes. The agreement enforceability is also being contested. During Blanche's confirmation hearing, Senator Dick Durbin read the settlement language aloud. Now, listen to the words Durbin reads. Then listen to Blanche when Durbin asks whether those words cover past filings.
The United States, your signature, the United States releases, waives, acquits, and forever discharges each of the plaintiffs when it comes to tax liability. That's how it reads. It's pretty sweeping. You don't believe that is a discharge forever from liability?
Of any past filings, yes.
All right.
Okay, that little yes there is carrying more weight than the entire fund headline. All right. Durbin read language saying the government releases, waives, acquits, and forever discharges the plaintiffs from the covered liabilities. Let's go back and read that again. Durbin read language saying the government releases, waives, acquits, and forever discharges the plaintiffs from the covered liabilities. Blanche supplied one important limit. The agreement covers past filings while future returns remain open to audit. It also applies only to the people and entries named in the settlement. Those limits belong in the story here. So does the argument from Blanche and his supporters. They say the settlement protects people from politically motivated tax enforcement. Blanche once served as Trump's personal lawyer and now serves as acting attorney general. Can he grant retroactive protection to his former client and still preserve public confidence in the tax system? Look at what the Senate bargain actually accomplished. The giant fund came with terrible optics and immediate questions about payments to Trump allies. Killing it gave the Republican holdouts a visible achievement they could show the public. The tax provision is quieter and more technical. It may also be worth far more to the people it covers. Cornyn and Tillis raised concerns about that provision. Then they accepted a written clarification limiting it to past filings and the named parties. The clarification satisfied them and Blanche moved forward. This is how privilege survives scrutiny. It gets narrowed, renamed, and buried in settlement language. Then everybody celebrates because the flashing red light has been removed. Blanche's confirmation is still pending. The two holdouts have promised support. The committee vote comes next. And keep these two benefits separate. The fund is rescinded. The retroactive IRS audit agreement remains in place. Its written limits are now part of the fight over its legitimacy. That is today's first protection test. Washington removed the benefit that embarrassed the coalition. It preserved the one that may shield the president's family from a claimed tax exposure above $100 million. Keep that word protection in your head. We are moving from a tax agreement in Washington to a Haitian woman left at a Pittsburgh bus shelter. The distance between those two stories is the whole brief here. Now we move from paperwork used as protection to paperwork used as enforcement. A form can decide whether somebody eats. It can decide whether a traveler enters the country. And institutional paperwork can help decide whether a vulnerable woman ever makes it home. Administrative systems sound cleanest when the person disappears inside an acronym. So we begin with her name. Daphy Michel was a 31-year-old Haitian asylum seeker living in Charlotte, Pennsylvania. She spent 6 months in a county jail after a reported mental health crisis. When the charges were dismissed, she was transferred to the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. She did not go home. ICE put an ankle monitor on her and released her in Pittsburgh, about 20 miles from where she lived. The Allegheny County medical examiner later described her condition when she left federal custody. Michel, I think that's pronounced Michel. Michel was a vulnerable adult. She had severe mental health issues that were untreated. She also faced a significant language barrier. She was wearing summer clothes as the temperature fell to about 20 degrees. Surveillance footage obtained by the local nonprofit newsroom Public Source showed her spending roughly 24 hours at a bus shelter. She died of hypothermia on March 2nd. Her family's attorney is Joseph Patrick Murphy. He says a lawsuit against the United States and several government and non-government entities should be filed within weeks. The full list of parties has yet to be identified publicly, and the planned lawsuit begins a civil claim. It doesn't settle one. The medical examiner classified Michel's death as a homicide because it resulted from another person's actions. Now, that medical classification does not establish criminal guilt. Pittsburgh detectives are investigating while DHS denies any responsibility for Michel's death. DHS says she was released in sunny weather with her belongings, a fully charged phone, and access to public transportation. Murphy says her phone plan had expired while she was in jail. Here's Joseph Patrick Murphy describing what the family believes happened after federal custody ended.
At one point, screaming at imaginary people, and they knew this. They just dumped her in a bus shelter, language barrier, educational barrier, and psychiatric barrier, and left her to fend for herself. The bus shelter, she never figured out how to leave. She sat there for days and ultimately froze to death.
Left her to fend for herself. I want you to sit with that for a moment because criminal guilt and civil liability remain unresolved. Even so, the institutional failure is visible in the distance between release and safety. That distance can become fatal when a vulnerable person becomes somebody else's problem. Now, widen the frame from one woman to millions of family records. Today, 25 states sue to block a federal policy involving temporary assistance for needy families, or TANF. TANF is federally funded and administered by the states. It helps low-income families with children. The Administration for Children and Families says it can share state TANF records with other federal agencies. That list includes DHS. These records can include Social Security numbers, income, and marital information. The policy is scheduled to take effect August 11th. The states say Congress put them in charge of eligibility. They also say the policy ignores existing limits on data sharing. Their lawsuit alleges violation of the Administrative Procedure Act and the Constitution. Federal officials say they need access to determine whether states are checking recipients' citizenship or immigration status. Here is the practical problem. A parent applies because the rent is due and the children need food. That application could place the family's information within reach of the department that runs immigration enforcement. Some eligible families may walk away. They cannot tell where the benefits office ends and the enforcement system begins. Same pressure showed up outside Miami City Hall today. South Florida residents protested the Miami Police Department's agreement with ICE under a program called 287G. The agreement was signed in 2025. It allows certain local officers to perform federal immigration enforcement duties under ICE supervision. The protest came days after the federal government ended temporary protected status for Haitians. Nearly 160,000 Haitians live in South Florida. Demonstrators asked city commissioners to end the police department's ICE agreement. A person witnessing domestic violence, a robbery, or a medical emergency, they need to know that calling 911 will bring help. Now, add the possibility that the local uniform could also become an entry point to immigration enforcement. Every request for help comes with a second calculation. Public safety starts ending before anybody is taken into custody. And the same administrative pressure now reaches the front door of legal travel. A permanent State Department visa bond rule took effect today for certain B1 and B2 visas. Those visas cover temporary business and tourist travel. The current list includes 50 countries. 30 are in Africa. Consular officers may require an applicant to post $10,000, $15,000, or $20,000 before issuing the visa. The requirement is discretionary. Waivers are possible. The money can be returned when the traveler follows the visa terms and leaves on time. That distinction here matters. So does the cash. A refundable bond still demands up to $20,000 in cash before travel. The rule makes lawful travel a financial test controlled by consular discretion. African travelers carry most of the country-level exposure here. Daphy Michel's release, the TANF policy, Miami's 287G agreement, and the visa bond program all operate under different laws. They also involve different agencies. But watch how vulnerability moves through all four systems. It can look like abandonment on a cold street, a family file shared across agencies, fear attached to a 911 call, or a price placed on permission to visit. Now, let's pick up the pace and move through 6 more places where technical, distant, or local machinery can bury the harm here. Okay, late Sunday, Cuba's national power grid collapsed again. Roughly 10 million people were left in darkness. This was the sixth nationwide failure reported this year. 2 happened in March. 3 happened in July. People in Havana slept outside to escape the heat. Cuba's power system was already old, brittle, and short on fuel. A U.S. oil blockade added more pressure. It cut the Venezuelan supply and pushed Mexico to halt shipments. Families, they feel both pressures at once here. Food spoils, transportation stops, medical care is interrupted. Heat becomes dangerous. Okay, over the weekend, wildfires around Spokane, Washington, forced about 60,000 people to evacuate. At least 600 homes, businesses, and other structures were destroyed. Patients at a Veterans Affairs office were among the people evacuated. Officials warned that dry weather would keep the danger alive. On Oregon's Warm Springs Reservation, thousands had already spent nearly a week without dependable power or clean water after the bench fire. Flames create the emergency. Infrastructure and political attention decide how long the emergency lasts. Native households too often begin recovery from the back of that line. In Gaza, Israeli strikes on Sunday killed at least 18 Palestinians, according to Palestinian medical authorities. It was one of the deadliest days since last year's ceasefire. The Israeli military said it targeted military operatives. Among the dead reported Sunday were a couple and their child. President Trump had called the latest movement on a peace plan a major milestone. Israel says its forces will remain until Hamas disarms and its tunnels are destroyed. Hamas says the attacks must stop first. Gazans are living inside the distance between the diplomatic announcement and the bomb. Today, a court fight opened in South Africa over the Expropriation Act. Opposition parties and civil groups asked the Western Cape High Court to strike the law down. The government says the law allows expropriation for public purposes or in the public interest. It generally requires an effort to reach an agreement first. Zero compensation is allowed only in limited circumstances. Washington has promoted a story of white persecution around that law. The administration has used it to pressure a black majority country and show special concern for Afrikaners. South Africa's land inequality grew out of colonial seizure and apartheid. When the proposed remedy becomes proof that white people are the endangered class, memory is being required to defend the outcome of dispossession. Today, 25 Democratic-led states sued in the U.S. Court of International Trade over Trump's newest tariffs. The administration placed duties of 10% and 12.5% on goods from 60 trading partners. It cited weak enforcement against goods made with forced labor. The states say the president stretched Section 301 of the Trade Act beyond its lawful purpose. They say forced labor became a pretext for reviving broad tariffs that had been placed under other authorities. The White House says the duties are lawful. Importers receive the bill first. Higher costs can then reach households, small businesses, and public agencies. And today, 5 anonymous federal employees filed a proposed class action over insurance coverage for gender-affirming care. The Office of Personnel Management Policy took effect in January. It blocks coverage for treatments such as hormone therapy, hysterectomies, and facial surgery. Okay, let's pick it up again. It blocks coverage for treatments such as hormone therapy, hysterectomies, and facial surgery when these treatments are used for gender transition. The same treatments can be covered in other circumstances. The workers say that that difference amounts to sex discrimination under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. They say at least 39,400 current or former federal employees and dependents could be affected. That estimate comes from the Williams Institute in July. OPM didn't immediately respond to Reuters' request for comment on the lawsuit. The case asks whether government can use a treatment's purpose to decide whose care an employee health plan recognizes. That legal answer is still ahead. The loss of coverage is already policy for workers and their families. These stories sit far apart on our map. Each one asks the same question. Who gets a buffer? And who absorbs the risk when a powerful institution writes the rule? That takes us to California. A court has now answered a liability question about later medicine that may be safer. Let's close with the Gilead case. There's a simple question buried inside a mouthful of pharmaceutical names. Suppose a company already sells an effective drug. It may also be developing another drug that could be safer. What does that company owe the patients taking the first drug while it decides whether to finish the second? Today, the California Supreme Court answered that question 6-1 in Gilead's favor. The court ordered the dismissal of negligence claims brought by about 24,000 people living with HIV. It became part of a widely used HIV treatment after the FDA approved it in 2001. It was effective. It also carried possible risks to kidney function and bone health. TAF is short for tenofovir alafenamide. Let's back up. Tenofovir alafenamide. Let's try that again. Tenofovir alafenamide fumarate. Okay, I gave it my best there. Think of TAF as a later version of the same basic medicine. It came with fewer of those kidney and bone side effects. Okay, the patient built their case around the years between those two drugs. They allege that Gilead stopped developing TAF in 2004. They say the company then waited nearly a decade to bring it to the market. According to the patients, that delay allowed Gilead to keep maximizing the value of older TDF medicines. It also let the company time the newer drug around the end of TDF's patient exclusivity. That is the patient's allegation here, okay? Today's decision came before a trial. The court answered a threshold legal question, which is, what did California negligence law give these patients a valid legal theory in the first place? Gilead said TDF was federally approved, non-defective medicine that saved lives. Gilead said the early evidence on TAF showed too little improvement in safety and effectiveness. The company says that result didn't justify continued spending in 2004. Its lawyers raised another concern. If juries can look backward at these decisions, they could punish a company for how it ranked certain, or uncertain rather, research projects years earlier. The majority accepted that legal concern. Justice Joshua Groban wrote that a duty to innovate would force juries to second-guess difficult scientific judgments made while the science was still moving. The court also warned about broad liability. It said that liability could burden pharmaceutical research and affect innovation, public health, and patient safety. So listen, here is the holding. California negligence law doesn't require a drug maker to develop and release a different medicine sooner when the drug already on the market is considered non-defective. The court closed this route to liability and ordered the claims dismissed. The legal category sounds clean, non-defective. The experience underneath that word is much messier. A drug can be effective and approved while some patients still suffer known side effects. The ruling keeps the company's research timeline away from this jury. The larger policy question remains in public view here. Who gets to judge the delay when patients say the science was ready and the company says it was not? The answer reaches far beyond one company. The CDC's 2024 surveillance report counted 38,793 HIV diagnoses. Okay, that count covers the United States, 7 territories, and freely associated states. Black people accounted for 39% of those diagnoses. Black people make up about 12% of the United States population. 65% of the diagnoses were attributed to male-to-male sexual contact. Keep the data sets separate here. The court case involves roughly 24,000 patients. Today's reporting doesn't establish the race or sexual identity of every plaintiff. The CDC numbers describe the larger public health terrain. They show which communities already carry a disproportionate share of HIV diagnoses. Those same communities must also navigate treatment decisions, insurance barriers, drug pricing, and the consequences of corporate development choices. One more part of the ruling matters. Justice Kelly Evans dissented. She described Gilead's alleged conduct as morally blameworthy. She also pointed toward the California legislature and urged lawmakers to consider whether drug companies deserve this protection from negligence claims. That is where the public pressure fight goes next. Gilead won the legal question before the court, so the policy question now belongs to legislatures and regulators. They can require research disclosures, examine developmental incentives, and improve reporting. They can also decide what accountability should exist when a promising alternative is put on hold. FDA-approved answers whether the existing drug can be sold. A company's development calendar raises a different question about accountability. Lawmakers and regulators still have to answer that one. Okay? Here's the pressure map coming out of today's brief. Start with the Senate Judiciary Committee. That is the next pressure point in Todd Blanche's nomination. Senators must decide whether killing the fund is enough while the Trump tax protection remains in place. The TANF case has the shortest clock. Federal sharing of family assistant records is scheduled to begin in August 11th unless the states win emergency relief. Watch whether a court blocks the transfer before the system absorbs Social Security numbers along with income and family records. In Miami, the pressure is local. Residents can keep pressing city commissioners over the 287G agreement. That agreement places local policing inside federal immigration enforcement. This choice belongs in public meetings, on commission agendas, and in the record. Local leaders should have to answer for it in public. The visa bond rule is already in effect, so the next job is an implementation audit. Which applicants receive the $10,000, $15,000, or $20,000 bond? How are consular officers using their discretion? Is a legal path into this country becoming a wealth test concentrated on African travelers and other covered nationalities? After the Gilead ruling, watch the lawmakers and regulators. The court defined the limit of this negligence theory. Public officials still have the power to examine the incentives behind drug development timing. They can also decide whether patients deserve another form of protection. Now, put today's pieces beside each other. A settlement agreement purports to reach backward and protect a president's family from possible tax exposure. A TANF file can move forward into immigration enforcement. A counsel or officer can demand a bond worth $20,000. And in California, patients have learned that the years a different HIV drug spent off the development track fall outside this negligence theory. The rank structure is written into the paperwork. Which liabilities get waived? Which records get shared? Which legal travelers can afford the price of entry? Which harm does the law leave to private corporate judgment? The paperwork tells you exactly who the system expects to absorb the risk. Okay, for those of you on YouTube, leave your read in the comment and share this episode. On Substack, restack it. And in the podcast feed, send it to one person who needs the map, so to speak. Become a paid XVOA subscriber at explicit.com. Thank you to every paid reader carrying this desk. Now, Buy Me a Coffee is a flexible way for people who want to contribute any amount they so please, but do not want another subscription. And for paid readers who want to give again. The links are below. That is today's Blackout Brief, and I'll see you tomorrow.